Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly break down how Ukraine defeated Portugal to secure an automatic berth at Euro 2020. But before we do that, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. But now, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at Ukraine more of a 4-3-3 with Yaremchuk, Marlos, and Yarmolenko up front. And in midfield, there went Zinchenko, Stepanenko, and Malinovsky. Then we move to Portugal, more of a 4-2-3-1 with Ronaldo up front, just in behind him, Gonçalo Guedes, João Mario, and Bernardo Silva, and in midfield, Danilo close to João Moutinho. So now, let's get to the first half, see how both sides are to approach the game, and how Ukraine started the game so well. When we break down Ukraine against Portugal, it basically was one game split into two. We had Ukraine dominating the opening 30 minutes, then Portugal shifting their system and Cristiano Ronaldo taking control. When we do look at the board, we have Ukraine in what should be a 4-3-3. At times, you could say that it did look like somewhat of a diamond because you had Yarmolenko and you had Yaremchuk playing more as wide forwards, and you had Marlos often dropping deeper to get on the ball, and his role was to ensure that Danilo couldn't get on the ball from deeper positions as well. When we do look at it, that was one of the key aspects, was that we did have Danilo trying to split the center backs to get on the ball. We had Marlo sticking to him. We had Yarmolenko doing a good job on Rafael Guerreiro. And the one weakness that the Ukraine defense without the ball had was the fact that Yaremchuk was often tucking narrow and not sitting on Nelson Semedo, but rather aiming to block off the passing lane into him. And the Portuguese midfield and defense just simply lobbed the ball over him or bypassed him with a simple pass because he was caught out way too narrow to play in Semedo, and he was able to push forward. And that was one way of looking at it. What we did see from Ukraine was the fact that the shuttlers did drop off a bit deeper. More so, we saw Stepanenko and we saw Malinovsky drop deeper in that right channel to get on the ball. And that saw them push Karavesev forward. And they pushed him forward with the fact that when he pushes forward, they're trying to suck out a marker in that position. They're trying to pull Rafael Guerreiro into that space, hoping that Guedes does step to either Stepanenko or does step to Malinovsky. And then when he does step, they're looking to get the ball into Yarmolenko in that channel so that he could drag out Ruben Dias or any other Portuguese central midfielder out of position to get into 1v1 battles. And the same thing could be said on the other side, where we saw Mykolenko step forward, trying to drag out Semedo so that they could have Yaremchuk push into that space. But the midfield battle was kind of set in stone, but Portugal did have their issues there because, like I said, Danilo had to worry with Marlos, who was dropping off a bit deeper. Zinchenko and João Moutinho seemed like the only balanced battle, and then you had João Mario stepping to Stepanenko. So with João Mario stepping to Stepanenko, that means that Malinovsky is the spare man, and we'll get to him in a bit because he played a key role in those opening 10 minutes as Portugal was trying to really figure out Ukraine's system. But as the game wore on, they would try to get Guedes to step on him, and it was a big issue that they did encounter, but Portugal were able to override it once they did shift their system. On the flip side, or when you look at the way that Ukraine were looking to press, it was something similar, but they also did have their issues because, like I said, Marlos was stepping out into Danilo to ensure that he couldn't get on the ball. The Yaremchuk issue was pivotal. Zinchenko against João Moutinho. You had, unfortunately, oddly, you had Stepanenko push off João Mario, who looked to push forward to the center back, or sometimes he'd push him off to Malinovsky. And the reason why that happened is because in case Bernardo Silva did kind of shift over into a central position, they can ensure that Stepanenko is able to pick him up. But Stepanenko often drifted laterally, trying to help out in every aspect that he can from flank to flank, and often looking to patrol that center of the pitch to ensure that Ukraine were comfortable in that zone. But those were the key battles across the pitch. When we look to the chances that Ukraine created, the first few stemmed through Malinovsky and the fact that they were trying to get the ball's in behind Rafael Guerreiro to Yarmolenko. When we look to the first example, it is Ukraine taking advantage of Portugal not knowing how to cope with their system. And it's Malinovsky dropping deeper to get on the ball, like I said. And because the midfield battle was set in stone with João Mario stepping to Stepanenko and Zinchenko being marked out of the game by João Moutinho and Marlos being marked out by Danilo, there's free space for Malinovsky to push forward. And what he does locate is that he's able to play the ball across Danilo for Yaremchuk, who is looking to make the run across Pepe. His first touch is good, and he fires a little shot on goal that Rui Patricio is able to deal with. Shortly after that, we see a similar route to goal that leads to the corner kick that eventually results in Ukraine's opener. It's Malinovsky again dropping off a bit deeper to get on the ball in that right channel. Guedes isn't picking him up, and with Karavayev pushing forward, that means that Rafael Guerreiro has to step to him. Malinovsky clips the ball into that channel over Rafael Guerreiro for Yarmolenko breaking in behind. Yarmolenko does bring it down, and Rafael Guerreiro does retreat, and he's able to hold off Guerreiro and Ruben Dias coming across. And what happens now is that you end up seeing Karavayev making an overlapping run, and when he makes that overlapping run, João Mario does come across, and Yarmolenko is able to split João Mario, and he's able to split Rafael Guerreiro for Stepanenko breaking into right half space, and his cross is blocked by Ruben Dias for the corner kick, and that corner kick does see Ronaldo get beat at the front post, and the ball is nodded into the path of Yaremchuk, who's able to put Ukraine ahead. But this doesn't stop there, and we end up seeing more chances from Ukraine. And when we look to the next example, Portugal actually do well here, but it is interesting to see the fact that all three of Ukraine's central midfielders drop off deeper into that channel aligned with Malinovsky. So we drop off into that space, and what happens here is that forces Karavayev to push forward. Krivitsov does step forward, and he slides the ball into the path of Karavayev, which does drag out Rafael Guerreiro. But what happens here that is very good is that Guedes tracks the run of that Yarmolenko is about to make into that right channel. So when the ball is put into Yarmolenko, Guedes does a great job to ensure that he's unable to break forward to mount another attack. Then we get the second Ukraine goal, and that is just simply all mistakes from Portugal. When we look at it, it's Matvinchenko nodding the ball over Bernardo Silva to Mykolenko. Now with Mykolenko getting the ball in that left touchline, he's able to skip past João Moutinho, and Nelson Semedo has to step to him. With Nelson Semedo stepping to him, that means Yaremchuk is narrow. Yaremchuk is narrow, and why Portugal were bypassed, the reason why Portugal was bypassed here was that Pepe did initially step to Marlos as that attack was being built, and once Marlos dropped off deeper, he retreated. Pepe should retreat back into his position, but rather than doing that, he gambles and he aims to cut off the pass into Yaremchuk. Why that's a big issue is because what happens now is that Mykolenko delivers a superb cross around Semedo and around Ruben Dias, and why that is an issue is based off the fact that Yarmolenko was already goal side of Rafael Guerreiro, who switched off. Cross is played in. If Pepe retreats into his position, there's a good chance that he does block it off. He doesn't. Cross is delivered into the box. You have Yarmolenko with an easy tap in, and that is how Ukraine were able to double their lead in the opening 30 minutes. Besides that, there was only one more chance where Portugal pressed, and it does go to show the issues that they had based off Ukraine's shape and the movement that they were making, and how Ukraine possibly should have made this a 3-0 game going into halftime. When we look at it, it's Portugal's press going wrong. We have Ronaldo stepping to Piatev, you have Gonzalo Guedes stepping to Stepanenko, and Matvinchenko is pressed by Bernardo Silva. But what happens here is that with Bernardo Silva pressing Matvinchenko, that means that you have Nelson Semedo stepping to Mykolenko. With him stepping to Mykolenko, Matvinchenko clips the ball over Semedo into the path of Yaremchuk because Pepe misses the ball. Now that results into a 3v2 with Ukraine running at Portugal's backline. You have Yaremchuk with the ball. You have Marlos darting in between Ruben Dias and Rafael Guerreiro, and that means that you have the pass open for Yarmolenko. So So Yaremchuk slides the ball to Yarmolenko, but it's a bit under hit, and it allows Rafael Guerrero to recover. And when Yarmolenko takes him on, he cuts outside and fires a shot over the net. Those were Ukraine's chances, but what must be said is that once they went up 2-0, their energy levels dropped a bit, and Portugal eventually grew into the game. And why they were able to do that was because Ronaldo, who for the opening 25 minutes or so was often operating in a central role, he started drifting out to the right flank, and that created space for Portugal to create chances. So when we looked at their first opportunity, it highlights the issue that Ukraine had with Yaremchuk. You have Semedo sliding the ball out to João Moutinho, a square pass, and what happens there is that with Zinchenko stepping towards him, you have Bernardo Silva drifting centrally to pull out Mykolenko. Now that creates space for Semedo to break forward down the right channel, and what we end up seeing is Moutinho simply chips the ball over Yaremchuk, who is narrow, for Semedo, and Mykolenko has to come across. But what happens there is that you end up seeing Semedo beat him 1v1 and break across half space into the byline, and when he pulls the ball back for a Ronaldo attempt, it's Stepanenko who comes across to clear the lines. Shortly after that, we do see Portugal move to a 4-4-2, and that eventually shifted the game for them. You had Guedes, who was playing more central with Ronaldo, João Mario moved to the left-hand side, and you had Bernardo Silva moving to the right. Bernardo's gonna look to dribble and cut in from the right flank and deliver crosses into the box. Now Ronaldo has a focal point to play off of, and it allows him to drift into spaces because it'll ensure that Portugal have someone sitting central. And João Mario is going to also try to tuck in and combine in a central position, and that creates space for the fullbacks in Rafael Guerrero and in Semedo to push forward, and that will look to push back Yaremchuk and push back Yarmolenko. When we look to an example of Ronaldo causing havoc at the Ukraine backline once Portugal shifted to a 4-4-2, we do see Ronaldo, like I said, drifting out to the right channel to receive a ball from Nelson Semedo. When he receives a pass from Semedo, that pulls out Zinchenko, and Ronaldo instantly slides the ball to Bernardo Silva ahead of Mykolenko. Ronaldo then darts into that right half space to create space to try and get the scoop pass from Bernardo Silva. But what is also key here is that João Mario pulls Malinovskyi away from Ronaldo, and that allows Ronaldo to receive the ball in that right half space. That attracts Matvienko to him and Malinovskyi, and once they do step to Ronaldo, he tees up João Mario, who forces a save out of Piatov. Like I said, Ronaldo drifting to the right-hand side, combining with teammates, Portugal slowly look better. When we look to another opportunity where Ronaldo is able to exert his influence on the game from the right-hand side, what we do see is he slides into space in between Zinchenko and a high Yaremchuk to receive the ball as he steps off the back four. What he ends up doing now is that he's able to run at the back four, but he offers to slide the ball out to Bernardo Silva to run at Mykolenko, and Bernardo Silva is able to cut in as Mykolenko drops, and he fires a low shot on goal that is pushed away by Piatov. Like I said, Portugal's initial system wasn't working. It was imbalanced. We weren't seeing the best out of them. Ronaldo was isolated up front, not receiving service based off of Ukraine's approach and their defensive shape without the ball. And Portugal were getting hit on the counterattack and not being able to stop the threat that Ukraine were imposing when they pushed the fullbacks forward. However, Portugal did grow into the game, and as Ukraine were unable to mount counterattacks, they had the better chances once Ronaldo shifted out to the right channel. So when we look to the second half, João Felix did come on for Guedes, and that did make sense because he's much better with his back to goal. He's able to link play, and perhaps they could find some combination with Ronaldo to cause havoc to the Ukraine backline. When we do look at it, Ronaldo was again involved in most of the best moves that Portugal did create. He forced Yarmolenko into a booking, and he also fired a 25-yard free kick that forced Piatov to push an effort away from goal. But shortly after that, we have Ruben Dias stepping forward, and he slides the ball to the right of Malinovskyi for Ronaldo, who does drop off deeper, and he slides the ball into the path of Rafael Guerreiro, and because Yarmolenko was caught a bit high, Malinovsky has to shift over. So when Malinovsky does shift over, he's able to poke the ball around Malinovsky. Rafael Guerreiro is able to do that to find Cristiano Ronaldo, and he goes 1v1 with Krivitsov, and he's able to cut in on him and again force Piatov into making a great save from distance. We did see some changes made after that. Bruno Fernandes did come on for João Moutinho, and he moved out to the right side of the 4-4-2. And we saw Konoplyanka come on for Marlos, who wasn't offering much of a threat up front. But they did force Portugal into some issues with their shape based off the fact that Danilo had to stick with Marlos, and that was a factor there. What we ended up seeing throughout that was João Felix was on Stepanenko. We had Zinchenko against João Mario, and what we also ended up seeing was the fact that we had Bruno Fernandes dealing with Malinovsky. So with that being said, all that needed to take place was that Ukraine had to shift the ball out to Karavayev, and if they shifted the ball out to Karavayev, because Danilo couldn't step, João Mario would be forced to take that task, and it would leave Zinchenko free on the ball, and that was an outlet for Ukraine to exploit. However, we still saw more attacking play from Portugal as Ukraine dropped off deeper and deeper. When we look to the next opportunity, it's Semedo ahead of Konoplyanka on the ball, and he ends up pulling it back for Bruno Fernandes, and he's stepped to by Zinchenko. What Fernandes does is that he plays a ball into João Felix, who ends up backing into Matvienko. When he backs into Matvienko, he's able to split Konoplyanka and Karavayev to slide the ball out to Bernardo Silva, who was able to deliver a cross into the box for Bruno Fernandes, who continued his run off of Zinchenko and ahead of Stepanenko at the front post, but he just nodded his effort inches over the net. Bernardo Silva struggled in the second half, trying to dribble and cut in. He wasn't really offering a threat, and his crosses from wide areas weren't forcing the Ukraine backline into any issues. And as Ukraine dropped off into a more of a 4-5-1 with the half continuing, we ended up seeing another change, and that was Bruma coming on and moving to the left-hand side. And although he didn't necessarily force Piatov into a save, he did earn the penalty that was awarded as he cut in on Karavayev, and he fired a shot on goal that was handled by Stepanenko. Stepanenko was sent off, Ronaldo converted, and now the pressure was on Ukraine to see out the result. Kovalenko came on for Yaremchuk, and we did see them move to a 4-4-1, and Yarmolenko moved up front, and that meant that Zinchenko moved back to the left with Malinovsky, and he was tasked with stepping to Bruno Fernandes. And one of Portugal's better chances shortly after Stepanenko sending off was Zinchenko not getting out to Bruno Fernandes in time, and he ends up clipping the ball over Matvienko, and Ronaldo spun off him to receive the ball over the top, but he couldn't beat Piatov once again. Besides that, we saw Portugal mounting on the pressure. We had Ronaldo, João Felix, and Bernardo Silva in central roles, but they weren't creating chances, and it took till the dying moments of the game for them to get something. And once again, it's Bruma who does get on the ball to take on Kovalenko, and he ends up splitting Malinovsky, and he ends up splitting Karavayev to find Rafael Guerreiro in left half space. Guerreiro turns and he locates Ronaldo, tucking in between Mykolenko and in between Konoplyanka to deliver the cross into the box, and Ronaldo towers over them to not an effort on goal that Piatov saves once again, and Pepe's unable to fire the rebound in. Danilo hit the crossbar shortly after that, and that summed up Portugal's night. Ronaldo was influential once Fernando Santos moved to a 4-4-2. He drifted out to the right. He forced Piatov into several quality saves, and he was unable to beat the keeper from open play, and that was a difference maker here. When you break down the game as a whole, Ukraine started off the game well in the opening 20 to 25 minutes. They countered well. Portugal had a difficult time adjusting to their system, but once Fernando Santos switched the system to a 4-4-2, then they got into the game. And you have to give him credit, although he did start the game poorly and probably got his tactics and to the personnel wrong on the night, you have to give him credit for the substitutions that he did make. João Felix didn't really work out, but Bruma was involved in some of their better chances, as was Bruno Fernandes. And although this does put Portugal in a tough hole, and it did see them lose their first game since the World Cup, you have to think that they're going to qualify and get out of this group. Whereas for Ukraine, great 30 minutes and they were able to hold on, and now they're off to Euro 2020. But let me know what you guys think. Can Ukraine cause a few upsets this summer? And what about Portugal? Do you think they're favorites to retain their European championship? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.